So there are no public comments. Yeah. And I think that generally everybody's pleased that this is not as convoluted as it has been in the past. We'll see.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
All right, good morning. Good morning, everyone. We are going to begin the Thursday, December 13th IAC meeting. And we are going to, I think we've got everybody here. We're missing Miss Alvara. Do we know if she's attending?
She's not.
Okay, all right, so then we can begin. How about,
Miss Senator Hoffman, I think, is on the phone?
Not yet.
Not yet.
okay, and how about Mr. Schuler?
He's running late. He said that he would be in later in the meeting.
Okay, so we have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and begin. Welcome to everyone. It's great to see everyone. And we have a lot to do today on our agenda, a lot of important things to do. Senator Hoffman, are you on the phone?
Did someone just join?
Yeah, Somerset County did.
Okay, we're just starting.
All right, so we do have a number of local school systems that will be on the phone today, so we welcome them as well. So I'm going to ask if there are any questions or revisions to the agenda from our last month's meeting. Hearing none, I'm going to call for a motion to approve those minutes. And
So
second?
moved.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve. Any questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion approved unanimously. We do not have any public comment today, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. And as you can see, the consent agenda contains items A through M in section 1. And I would like to propose, normally we don't have such a long consent agenda. If there are any of those items that any of the IAC members would like to pull out and look at more directly and not approve as a part of the consent agenda, we'd be happy to note that and then come back to those items. So I'm going to pause for a minute to see if anyone has any questions or would like to pull any of those out for further consideration. Secretary McCord.
Madam Chair, I've had the opportunity to go through things, and I'm not asking to put anything out, but I appreciate the chair's opportunity to do so in case we had some kind of issue with that. Thank you.
All right, any other questions on the consent agenda? Just want to make a note, the original IAC is very attuned to these issues because they are very routine kinds of things that go on in the department and division, and so it is not unusual for them to be a part of a consent agenda, but we wanted to give the new members an opportunity to double check. All right, do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it sounded to me like that was unanimous, so thank you very much. And we'll move on then to the local school system presentations, which are all in section 2. I want to welcome the local school systems who are making presentations today. Please note that section 2 in your books also includes written testimony from 5 additional local school systems who are not presenting today but wanted you to have some information. I also have a special apology from the superintendent in Kent County. Dr. Couch had jury duty today and wanted to be here. Certainly wanted to be here rather than be where she is, but she's doing her due diligence and wanted the IAC to know that. So we're going to welcome, is Calvert County on the phone?
Yes, we are.
All right, would you, good morning, Calvert County. Would you please introduce yourselves and then you have the floor.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity today to present to the Interagency Commission on School Construction. I am Tony Navarro, Executive Director of Administration, and I am speaking on behalf of Dr. Curry today. Dr. Curry is attending our December Board of Education meeting at this time. With me today is Ms. Shashida Warner, Director of Construction. At this time, I would like to share some current highlights for our school system. Calvert County has 16,049 students. We're in the second year of implementing our district strategic plan that has 5 priority areas: equity, student outcomes, climate culture, workforce, and community engagement. We are very pleased with our recent ESSA star rating results for our 22 schools. 9 schools earned 5 stars, 11 schools earned 4 stars, and the other 2 schools earned 3 stars. While we are very pleased with these high levels of student achievement, we are focusing on closing the extreme gaps that exist for students with disabilities, African American students, and students eligible for free and reduced meals. To do so, our administrators and teachers are being trained in the Learning Focus Framework per a 4-year implementation plan. The Learning Focus Framework encompasses purposeful lesson planning that results in a high level of student engagement and achievement. Finally, our graduation rate is just under 95%. All of this success is connected to the IAC's consistent and responsive funding of school facilities that meets the needs of today's students and staff. Also, one of our elementary schools, Mutual Elementary, received the Silver Hammer Award in 2016. This award recognizes schools demonstrating fiscal prudence through superior school maintenance. Our state maintenance reports consistently rate Calvert County schools, on average, above 90%. We had a Maryland Association Boards of Education risk inspections in February of 2018, and the average score for the 3 schools inspected was 93%. And with that, I'll turn our presentation over to Mrs. Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. Thank you, Interagency Commission on School Construction. I'm Shashida Warner, Director of School Construction for Calvert County Public Schools. We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss and review Calvert County's funding request for the FY 2020 Capital Improvement Program. There are 3 projects listed within our CIP for FY 2020 that include state funding requests. We appreciate the IAC staff's 75% recommendations, which show strong support for these projects. We also appreciate the transparency within the process this year through the preliminary 100% recommendations that reflect full funding of our requests. Today, we'd like the opportunity to highlight the importance of these projects in order to maintain support for full funding. All 3 of our project requests this year are systemic renovations. As Calvert County's inventory continues to age, systemic projects become increasingly important. They are a key component to operating our buildings effectively and efficiently and aid in providing an appropriate environment for student learning. Our first project request this year is the Southern Middle School Controls Project. This is a systemic renovation project consisting of replacement of the building automation system for the HVAC equipment at Southern Middle School. The overall budget for this project is $599,625 with a state share of $310,000. The existing pneumatic controls associated with the HVAC system at Southern Middle are at a critical juncture. The existing building control system is outdated technology, and the pneumatic tubing that's connected to a majority of the HVAC equipment is contaminated with oil and water. The constant leaks and calibration issues force Calvert County Public Schools maintenance staff to expend an overabundance of manpower to perform required repairs and provide comfort control for staff and students. The new controls will be state-of-the-art digital direct controls, or DDC. Our second project request is for Patuxent High School HVAC equipment replacement. The project scope replaces the existing 117 VAV, or variable air volume, terminal unit equipment throughout the school, as well as a portion of the heating and ventilation units. The existing VAV terminal unit equipment has deteriorated and does not adequately provide conditioned air to the classroom spaces. Additionally, several areas of the building, including the gymnasium, provide heating only through heating and ventilation units. This equipment will be replaced with energy-efficient rooftop units that will supply heating and air conditioning. The overall budget for this project is $2,147,375 and will be divided over 2 years to align with actual construction phasing. This year's funding will be for Phase 1 for $1,148,000 with a state share of $594,000. Our third and final project request is a Calvert Country School HVAC systemic renovation. The current HVAC system at this facility is beyond its projected life cycle. The 2 boilers from 1958 and 1983 are old steam generators, which limit the use of modern air handling equipment. The chiller was added to the facility in 1983 and has been very problematic to maintain over the last few years. The existing through-the-wall ventilators can't introduce outside air and are not capable of handling the needs of some of the individuals being served at the special needs facility. Additionally, the fire alarm is original to the building and requires an upgrade. The project replaces the chiller, boilers, and through-the-wall air handling units. The central heating and cooling plant equipment will be replaced. New DOAS, or dedicated outdoor air system equipment, will be incorporated into the HVAC system, and all through-the-wall units will be replaced. Additionally, the fire alarm system will be upgraded as part of the project. With an overall budget of $2 million, the state share is $1,034,000. In closing, we appreciate the support the IAC has given to Calvert County in the past. Your continued support will ensure that Calvert County can provide safe, healthy, and well-maintained facilities for our staff and students. Thank you. And at this time, we will take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from any of the IAC members? Yes.
Thank you. This is Dick Lombardo. Can you tell us what the age of the equipment at Patuxent High School, which is being replaced, what is the age of that equipment?
The equipment is all original to the construction of Patuxent High School. So all of the VAVs and the heating and ventilating equipment is original. And that was 1995.
Thank you.
Yes, Secretary Churchill.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for your presentation. I have a similar question that Dick just asked, but it's for Southern Middle School. Same question. You were replacing all the controls, going to a DDC system, but what's the age of the equipment?
So Southern Middle School was actually done in various phases. So there have been a variety of additions that were done to Southern Middle, so the unfortunately, as far as the pneumatics, any time that we added any kind of air handling equipment, we went back with pneumatics. So there were a total of 3 additions that were done at Southern Middle. And they range from the beginning of the 1980s, and I believe that the last edition
with Mill Creek somewhere around 2000.
Yeah, so that would have been the last time. So a majority of the building is from the 1980s, and that's when the pneumatic lines are from, for a majority of the building.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Calvert County? All right, thank you, Calvert County. We appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we're going to begin with Somerset County, also on the line. Good morning, Somerset County.
Good morning. How are you?
Please introduce yourselves and begin.
Good morning, everyone. John Gaddis, Superintendent of Schools. Also in our room, or in my office, I have Danielle Haley, who is our Supervisor of Facilities and Capital Planning. Tom Davis, our Deputy Superintendent, and Tracy Bartamy, our Director of Schools. So initially, I want to apologize to you because I'm going to be very, very brief. We appreciate your time. and we have been working with you for a number of years to help us in Somerset County, and we appreciate everything that is being done, and we're very excited about our new technical high school. You all are very familiar with the economic challenges and the situations that we face down here in Somerset. And so our one project is the last year of funding for the replacement, our J.M. Talls Technology and Career Center, which will now be called the Somerset County Technical High School. We are more than halfway through our construction. We are on time to open for the 2019-20 school year. We're very excited about that. Our local government made a true commitment to our school system and to our students by coming up with the $7.4 million of capital funding to help with this project. And as you know, we are heavily reliant on public school construction funding for this project. It continues to be our top priority. For us to be able to finish it, it is imperative that our FY20 request, which is our balance of funding of $3,161,000, is approved so that we can continue this project and complete it and make a substantial difference for our students. And that is our presentation. I'm not going to belabor the point with you, and we'll answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Dr. Gaddis, and I want to take a point of privilege of saying that it gave me a great thrill as I visited your school system last month and turned the corner and saw the new construction. As we had visited the Technology Center the year before and saw what a great need it was to replace this facility. And so I am very pleased that you all are operating on time and within your budget, and congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. It's truly, everywhere you go now, it's the talk of the town. It's a state-of-the-art facility. And in fact, we were just in a economic development annual breakfast, and the number of people coming to us and saying they're so excited. It's a great opportunity for our students, and I've said it for 5 years now. It will change how we do things in Somerset County, and again, we would not be able to do it without everybody's help, so we're just very thankful and appreciative.
Well, I look forward to visiting when it's completed, and I know that I speak for all of the IAC when with the idea that it will really help Somerset County as a whole. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Any other questions from the IAC? All right, hearing none, thank you very much for your presentation, Somerset County. Have a good rest of your day.
All right, thank you, guys.
And now we are ready to welcome Baltimore County Public Schools to present. Good morning, Ms. White. How are you? Nice to see you and your staff today. Sir?
There you go.
Am I on? There we go.
Yeah, you should be.
Good morning again. It is, like I said, it's an honor and pleasure to be here with you this morning. As you know, we have a pretty large capital program, and so I'm not going to belabor the point. We have a lot to kind of get through in a little time, but I just want to thank you again for allowing us to present today. Joining me today are members of my staff, Kevin Smith, who's our Chief Administrative and Operations Officer, Pete Dixit, who's our Executive Director of Physical Facilities, and we have multiple team members behind me, and I'll just have them wave. In the essence
Good
of
morning.
time, they are the wind beneath my wings, I'd like to say. So I am in full support of this request, and I would like to thank you for the funds already committed for school construction for the FY20 school year, for FY20, and to explain why additional funds are needed. This committee has already recommended $23.2 million for the FY20 allocation, and for that, we are grateful and we appreciate this generous support. The revised FY20 capital budget request of $0.5 million addresses additional critical system needs, which I would like to take the opportunity to review with you. Baltimore County has undertaken the largest 10-year construction program in Baltimore County's history. The $1.3 billion Schools for Our Future program is upgrading and providing modern learning environments for our children and for our teachers. And as a result of dialogue with our state and county fiscal partners, the school board, state and county elected officials, communities, and other stakeholders, the focus of our capital improvement plan continues to be centered on four major areas of concern. Our first priority is the installation of central air conditioning in all of our schools through systemic renovation or replacement of schools. BCPS has made substantial progress in the last few years installing central air conditioning in our older schools. For instance, in 2010, 90 schools in Baltimore County lacked central air conditioning. Our students and staff started this school year in air-conditioned schools in all but 8 of our facilities. Next year at this time, the number of schools that lack central air conditioning will drop to 5. And all of them will be completed through renovations or replacement projects that are currently planned as part of the Schools for Our Future program. The second priority of our capital improvement plan is focused on accommodating our growing population. Families are still choosing Baltimore County Public Schools, and they're choosing Baltimore County Public Schools by leaps and bounds, and for that we are proud. Over the last decade, student enrollment increased by 10,171 students, creating an additional need for seats that is roughly equivalent to 14 large elementary schools or 8 moderately sized secondary schools over and above our current 167 buildings. Enrollment is projected to increase from 113,814 students, the 2018-19 official enrollment, to over 119,000 students by 2024. With 682 square miles in Baltimore County, that equates to over 166 students per square mile, 174 by 2024. It is important to note that 23 of the top 25 priorities in this year's BCPS state capital request will add more than 4,355 new seats that will help to relieve capacity pressures for every area of the county through new or replacement schools or additions at the elementary, middle, and high schools. Our design decisions are carefully made by including the economic analysis of the design by incorporating value engineering, feasibility studies, and engineering energy efficient analysis, and development of an educational program. Wherever possible, prototype designs are adapted to the site for improved cost efficiency. Our third and no less important priority is to continue our ongoing program to modernize our high schools through either limited renovations or replacement schools. Funding for the limited renovation projects at Patapsco and Woodlawn High Schools is included in this year's request. Also included are the 3 new replacement high school projects, Delaney, Towson, and Lansdowne. While these project requests represent the final 3 major BCPS projects for this capital improvement plan cycle, they also clearly reflect a system-wide need to include secondary schools in our capital planning and represent the robust community engagement that we enjoy from stakeholders, not just in one area, but throughout our county and in all of our communities. We are grateful for their engagement and for their advocacy. As a result, BCPS has conducted a study of high school capacities to develop a set of strategies and options for addressing increasing enrollment at this level. The results of this study will inform future capital projects. Finally, BCPS must remain vigilant in our advancement of the BCPS systemic program to replace aging roofs, boilers, chillers, windows, doors, and other essential building systems, which is why we have added the last 12 priority systemic roof and chiller replacement projects to our request. In order for Baltimore County to focus on the big picture a comprehensive countywide facilities assessment study was completed by an independent third-party consultant in March of 2014. The study identified a countywide capital infrastructure need of $2.74 billion. That is over and above the funds provided through and including FY 2015. Even after considering an infusion of the additional capital funds provided by the county and the state in FY 16, 17, and 18 of nearly $530 million, there is still an additional need for over $2.2 billion to meet current capital infrastructure needs. This $2.2 billion figure does not include any additional funds that will be necessary to address the growing enrollment trend or any new programmatic requirements. We have implemented an aggressive program of maintenance management in our schools. The multi-pronged strategy consists of daily cleaning, regular preventive maintenance, scheduled maintenance of major equipment, efficient response to routine maintenance requests, and the inclusion of systemic projects in the capital improvement program. As a result, despite this almost overwhelming infrastructure need, the annual state inspection program has consistently given our school inventory an overall rating of good, with no individual facility receiving a rating lower than adequate. The Public School Construction Program Maintenance Effectiveness Report ranks Baltimore County at the top of the 5 largest school districts in the state of Maryland. In 2018, 32 schools were state inspected. Of that sampling, 17 schools received a rating of good, while 15 schools were rated adequate. Over the past 10 years, the state inspected 17 to 33 schools per year. On average, 7% of schools received a rating of superior. 70% received a rating of good, while 23% of schools were rated adequate. Additional positions and resources have been provided and requested in the operating budget to continue to maintain and improve our record as the buildings continue to age. Unfunded projects of the highest priority include the construction of replacement schools at Berkshire, Colgate, and Chadwick Elementary Schools. These 3 schools average over 70 years old and need to be replaced by new schools, which would provide a 21st century learning environment for each of those facilities. In addition, these 3 new schools would add 645 much-needed seats to relieve persistent overcrowding issues. We would also request your consideration of including funding for the 12 roof replacement projects and boiler and chiller replacement projects, which are included in this request as well. It is critical that BCPS continues to maintain its aggressive maintenance program in all schools to provide a safe, comfortable learning environment for both students and staff. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to tell you about the success of BCPS's Minority Business Enterprise program. One key component in the advancement of our program is our annual Meet the Primes event. This event allows minority contractors and subcontractors to meet other prime contractors to explore possible partnership opportunities. The 10th annual Meet the Primes, held this past October, had over 140 prime contractors and other exhibitors, with over 740 small and minority firms attending. As a result of our efforts in this area, MBE participation has increased from 23.9% in FY09 to 34.2% in FY18. We have provided additional information for your review of the specific projects that we are here to discuss, and we're happy to respond to your questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all of that information and summary. Are there questions for Baltimore County? Hearing none, we thank you very much for your presentation today and appreciate you coming down here.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And now I'd like to invite our next county, which is Baltimore City, to come up, please. Thank you. nice to see you today.
good to
You
see you
guys
too.
are very diligent at attending our meetings, so it's very nice to see you officially.
Always.
Please introduce yourselves and begin.
So my name is Lynette Washington. I'm the interim chief operating officer for Baltimore City Schools.
I'm Cindy Smith. I'm the Director of Facilities Design and Construction for City Schools.
Blaine Lipsky, Director of Facility Maintenance and Operations.
Great. So I want to start off by saying good morning, Dr. Salmon, the IAC Commission members and designees, and Mr. Gurrell. On behalf of Baltimore City Public Schools Board of Commissioners and the CEO, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to address the members of the IAC about Baltimore City Public Schools fiscal 2020 capital improvement priorities. We are here to appeal the IAC designee's funding recommendation for city schools. City schools requested approximately $85 million in state funds for 37 projects within our CIP. The requests included final funding for two major projects, which is Holleberg Elementary Middle and Graceland Park O'Donnell Heights Elementary Middle, which were both selected by the state to be net zero buildings, as well as local funding and planning for the renovation of an adjacent site to the Marie G. Fairing facility, which is existing overcrowded. We're also requesting funding for the Armistead Gardens Elementary School, which is another major renovation project to address overcrowding. In addition to the 2020 CIP, we're also requesting 32 systemic projects that consist of much-needed repairs of various building systems. We want to first thank you all for the $29 million recommended for our CIP request, and also thank the IAC staff for working with the team to ensure that there were no partial funded projects and that the contingency funds were redirected towards our B projects in our previous CIP. While Baltimore City has a number of different things that we've moved forward in progress and successes, I've included that within the backup presentation. For today, I just want to focus on some of our concerns during the CIP process within the time limited. So the first concern we would like to highlight is related to our fire safety projects. In review of the FY 2020 CIP, the IAC staff did not recommend the funding of the sprinkler component of the fire safety projects, and we just want to take this time to just express some of our concerns, and that we continue to assert the need for both the fire alarm and sprinkler component of the complete fire safety project. We note that City Schools has determined that the systems are necessary for the life and safety of our students and our staff, and also for our facility assets. We've consulted with other experts in the field around the fire safety projects, and there has been, there are a number of other school systems that have been impacted by not including fire safety projects. And so, again, the talking points are provided in the background, so I won't go into details because of the interest of time, but we want to express that Baltimore City still would like to include both the sprinkler component in the fire safety projects. The other concern that we have is related to the funding schedule for renovation and replacement projects. Again, the details are provided in the talking points, so I'm just going to summarize. So as Armistead Gardens is one of our elementary middle projects that we've included within the CIP that has not received funding. One of the discussions with the IC staff was that the project did not have schematics that were submitted in time for this, for the CIP submission and consideration. And one of the things that we just want to highlight is that for school systems that don't have significant local funding, our local funding is less than a third of most of our counterparts in the state. For school systems that don't have that funding, meeting that November, December deadline is going to be challenging. For one of the things that we did in previous CIPs to work with our finance department and also the state was that we identified that there were challenges and concerns about the estimations of our projects, and it was due to the fact that we don't have fully designed projects. And so with our finance department, we worked that we would use our local money to do feasibility studies. So feasibility studies for roof projects and for any other major projects that we're moving forward to make sure that we're more accurate in estimating our projects. But when you're requesting a certain percentage, which is about 3 to 5% of fees for local design projects on a major renovation project that's going to be 30 to 40 million. That's a significant hit to our local funds. And so that's a challenge when we are not giving any allocation from the state to be able to have local funds to match that. So that's a concern that we're highlighting. And we're requesting that the guidelines and consideration for school systems that have low tax bases who lack resources to forward fund design projects, major projects at city schools be considered. Lastly, in addressing just general needs, we would like to reiterate that our growing need for replacement of facility systems and support for replacement and renovations of schools is significant. In this fiscal year, it was determined that city schools would receive an allocation of approximately $29 million based on average funding provided by the IAC to city schools over a 10-year period. While we appreciate the allocation, we want to know that this allocation does not account for the years of recycled funds or demonstrate the growing needs within the district. The need for state support and funding in city schools is great, and we continue to look to the state to serve as the equalizer across the LEAs and provide resources to jurisdictions with high needs and limited resources. Unlike many large school systems in Maryland of similar size, city schools in comparison receives less than a third support from its local jurisdiction. We want to note that Baltimore City is not resistant in increasing support to city schools for our facility needs. The city has increased our CIP local support by a total of $6 million for FY 2019 through 2021 over a 3-year period. However, Baltimore City has a low tax base and high concentration of government, nonprofit, and other tax-exempt organizations that own property that do not pay taxes. Furthermore, the city does not capture the increasing economic growth to support school facilities. While the city economy shows growth in private wealth increases, as demonstrated with the decrease in the state's contribution with the local cost share formula, it is important to note that much of the growth has been fueled by tax subsidies without an increase in city revenues. Many owners in our most valuable buildings pay little to no property taxes, which represent approximately half of our revenue to pay back bonds and support schools. One of the things that we want to note is that we feel like our students should not be negatively impacted due to these social, political, or even economic challenges in the city. Our students deserve comfortable learning environments that are warm in the wintertime with adequate building envelopes and supportive spaces. The IAC staff has noted in review of the district's maintenance survey and assessment that the district's facility systems and overall conditions will not improve without additional capital support to replace building systems that are well beyond their life cycle. As we continue to address our internal processes, our systems, preventative maintenance, and staffing oversight of our facilities, these efforts will only go so far if our systems are not replaced and deferred maintenance continues to increase over time. As demonstrated in January during the prolonged winter period, our systems will continue to be impacted due to the age of the systems. Therefore, we ask for continual support and funding for our aging schools and building systems and review of our CIP request. So in closing, again, Baltimore City, we thank you all for your continual support in addressing our facility needs for our students.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. Any questions for Baltimore City?
I do have a question. When you talk about the allocation for design cost.
That doesn't mean anything.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. When you talk about the allocation for design cost, what are you suggesting? Do you have a specific request there on how to address that issue?
Well, we had asked for actual funding for the project. If we receive funding in the CIP for the project, we receive the local match to match that so that we can start design. So, you know, if we were able to receive the funding request for it, we would have the local match to start it.
For the entire project?
No, we had requested just a partial, you know, to start the project. And I don't remember the full amount or the amount we requested, but, you know, it would only start the project. It wouldn't be enough to, it's not the entire thing.
Any other questions?
Yeah, we only requested $1 million actually to get it started.
Could I ask a follow-up question? And that is that the allocations from the IAC are not allowed, they're not an eligible cost to be used for design. So how does that work? And if you could kind of frame that in the concern for partial funding that that you've had in past years?
Well, the systemics and partial funding is very different from a renovation or replacement project and, being a phased kind of project over several years of funding. The state request for the project isn't for the design. We know those costs aren't allowed, but the local match for large projects is actually allocated to specific projects. So for Armistead, if we got funding for it, then the local match that we get would actually have an allocation for funding for Armistead for us to start the design for it.
So locally, your finance department, and I understand you're under different pressures financially, which you described. Locally, your LEA, your administration, will not fund design unless there are construction funds that the state has made a commitment to.
That's correct.
Doesn't that put you at a disadvantage to being able to move projects forward as far as the total time it takes to deliver a project?
And so that's why we made the request for funding.
Okay,
And it was a small amount of funding to show that there was a state commitment for a major renovation project in order to get the design match.
And this is a very big deal. It puts them at a great risk. And as I estimate what the amount that they would need to move what they're able to match as far as the local match in order to move projects forward, because the 15 million you'd not be able to move that many projects forward. The design fees of 15 million associated with all of the projects that you need. It's a huge list, just like Baltimore counties. But if you had 5 to 6 million a year to be able to do design for your systemics and your projects that are upcoming, you would be ahead of the game to know you'd have projects ready to go whenever the dollars were there. And you would have the design so that you knew what to ask for, so that your estimates would be more accurate.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Dr. Washington and your team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd now like to invite Dr. Terry Albin and her team from Frederick County to come forward, please. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to be here this morning. I am joined today by Janice Spiegel, who is the educational liaison from our county government. County Executive Jan Gardner, who has been here with me every year, was unfortunately unable to schedule the time with us this morning, so Janice is here in her place. And Paul Lebo is our Chief Operating Officer, and he is standing in for my board president, who had to give a final exam this morning. So we regret that.
Important to do.
It's very important for him to do. And so Paul is going to start our testimony.
So Dr. Salmon, Mr. Gorel, and IAC members, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As Dr. Albin mentioned, Mr. Young sends his regrets, and I'm honored to present his testimony on his behalf. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak about our request for capital funding for school construction. Frederick County Public Schools has an enrollment of over 43,000 students, an increase of over 600 students from last year. This is consistent with growth that we've experienced over the last few years, and in fact, we're expecting an additional 800 students again next year. FCPS has not experienced this level of growth since the 1990s. We operate and maintain over 68 buildings, which total an approximate 6.7 million square feet of space and occupy over 1,400 acres. Since 1990, we have constructed 26 new or replacement buildings and 25 additions. However, a significant number of our buildings are still in whole or part 25 years or older. As you can see, our FY20 capital funding request reflects our needs to address both capacity issues as well as renovation and replacement of older buildings. Dr. Albin will speak momentarily in more detail about our funding requests, and at this time I'll turn it over to Mrs. Spiegel, who would like to express the county's support for our FY20 requests.
Good morning. Again, I'm Janice Spiegel. I'm the Education Liaison for the Office of the County Executive, and I'm pleased to be here today, and thank you for having us. The County Executive does send her regrets for being unable to attend personally, but I will refer to her testimony that's in your packet, and I'll just read her testimony, not word for word. We're here today to express our strong support for the Frederick County Public Schools fiscal year 2020 school construction priorities. Frederick County is fully prepared to provide the local share of all projects and is looking to accelerate school construction to ensure adequate school facilities for all of our students. Frederick County is a growing community. In fact, next year we are projected to add nearly 800 new students. That will be the third year in a row with significant enrollment growth. Between 2011 and 2014, the former Board of County Commissioners approved 14,400 new residential housing units and guaranteed developers the ability to build with developers' rights and responsibilities contracts. Most of this residential growth is planned in the Urbana, Newmarket, and Lake Ligonor areas of the county, with Frederick City being our fastest growing municipality. Frederick County remains challenged to provide and time needed public schools with already approved housing. We fully support the priority order of projects identified by the Board of Education in their 2020 request. These projects have been thoroughly planned, thoughtfully planned, often in tandem, so that Frederick County can maximize resources and keep project costs down. I'm very proud of the excellent relationship Frederick County government has with Frederick County Public Schools, including Dr. Albin, the Board of Education, and their staffs. This year, I went to the Board of Education in October, shortly with the county executive, shortly after the September 30 enrollment numbers were released, and we asked for their support to accelerate design for 2 additional desperately needed projects in our fastest growing area of the county. We were not surprised to receive unanimous support for that request. So today I come with 3 requests for this commission. 1, to support the Frederick County Board of Education fiscal 2020 request. To provide planning approval for Waverly Elementary School, as well as planning approval for a new East County area elementary school and an addition for Oakdale Middle School. The county has passed supplemental budget amendments for design to advance these projects in the county's capital improvement program. The county is committed to fund these projects, but we need the state's support and agreement to advance these projects. These projects are needed now, and we simply cannot wait. Support for the FCPS systemic projects we also asked today, which Dr. Albin will highlight in her remarks. It's our hope that by accelerating design for these school projects, the county will be able to accelerate construction if the state awards planning approval and commits to their share of funding in the future. We are prepared to forward fund these projects as needed. The county will forward fund and keep them on the timeline, and we have a very tight timeline to schedule our projects. Frederick County has a proven track record of responsibly managing projects, meeting timelines, using proven prototype designs, forward funding the state's share until the state can reimburse us, and maintaining our schools to meet the state's strict maintenance standards. Frederick County is doing its part, and we are committed to providing the county share of funding for the FY20 request. Thank you very much for supporting our schools in Frederick County. We certainly appreciate it. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Albin.
Thank you. Frederick County Public Schools do feel very fortunate with the collaborative relationship we have with our local government, but also with the state. And so we want to thank you and indicate our support for your recommendations to fund the remainder of the state's commitment for our new Butterfly Ridge Elementary School, the continued funding for the Urbana Elementary School replacement project, and you have been helping us with the second phase of an HVAC replacement at Catoctin High School, as well as our special needs school, Rock Creek, which again is in the process of being replaced. These projects are critically important, as you heard, to deal with our growth, but also aging infrastructure needs. And so one of the things that were not included in the recommendations that we hope you will reconsider are several systemic projects that are urgently needed. Walkersville Middle School has 4 sections of roof that are 27 years old and cover approximately 70,000 square feet, and these sections are actively leaking. So we are requesting funding to help us replace the wet insulation and do some roof repairs. This will allow us to alleviate the issue, but we also know that this school is up for a major renovation in another 8 to 10 years. So we want to do this to mitigate rather than try to replace the whole roof, because we know that in that cycle we will be looking for a more permanent solution. We are also asking for some funding to support upgrades to our security access controls. School safety is critically important to all of us, and we appreciate having the opportunity to use some grant funding through the Safe to Learn Act. However, we're focusing on our safety vestibules through that funding source. This is about tying together our visitor management system that we put in place this year, our security cameras, and our Alertus notification system. So in 58 of our schools, we're looking to put access panels and programming in that would tie all of those pieces together. The other critical systemic project for us is the replacement of a water storage tank that is 47 years old, and that is at Green Valley Elementary School. And it's really critical that we replace this tank before we have a catastrophic failure, and that would likely require us to close the school for a significant amount of time. So please consider adding funding for that. Local planning costs the IAC no money, and there were some projects on the list, but now they've been removed, and we're asking if you would please consider putting back the 3 local planning requests for the Waverly Elementary School replacement, our new East Frederick County area elementary, and in addition to Oakdale Middle. Having these in the approved budget assures our county government that the state will be supporting this project and enables us to begin to move forward. Waverly Elementary is one of our oldest schools, 49 years old, and one of our most vulnerable in that 83% of the students in that school are eligible for free and reduced meals. We've seen significant growth in that area. This is a critically important project for us. Oakdale Middle School, again, in an area where we have huge growth, and it is surrounded by another middle school that is 44 years old, was designed with an open space concept, and it's going to be challenging when we exceed the capacity of Oakdale Middle by 310 students to be able to fit them in to that other middle school. So that is why the addition there becomes critically important for us. The other piece is we've talked about the growth in Urbana, and that is beginning to bleed over into the Oakdale area. And so, again, we don't have room to move those students to the south. We have worked very hard to be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars, and I think that's why our county receives such support in their capital request. And we have worked very collaboratively with the state. We know that we are a good bet. In terms of funding, we have worked very hard to use prototype designs and value engineering. We have done a lot of partnerships within our community to support our project, and we work very hard to maintain the facilities that have been awarded to us through state and local funding. So we thank you again for considering our additional requests today, and we thank you for the support you have already demonstrated for us.
Thank you, Dr. Albin. I know that our director, Gorell, has a couple of comments.
I do. And first, I absolutely acknowledge just how well you work with your community, how that you apply best practices to develop design and deliver your projects. And we learn more from you than probably any other LEA. And I thank you also for loaning us Bob Wilkinson, who is working on the Ed Spec Committee with a couple of our members, Brian and Dick. Really important work, and because of his perspective and overall understanding, it really adds a lot of value. On these LP projects, we probably let the cat out of the bag by accidentally putting the LP in the current recommendation for East Frederick. We have to take that off at this point. All of the local planning approvals will come in May. We have to go through and see just how far we get with the funding that is available before we commit to future funding. And of course, the legislative session may bring us some surprises, hopefully good, to allow the IAC to consider more projects rather than less going forward. Thank you.
We'd like to thank you. I know that you came out to visit and actually see our Rock Creek School as it currently stands, but to also gain an understanding of the types of students that we have there. And we very much appreciate you coming out and taking a personal interest in looking at that and understanding our project better.
Absolutely, and this is kind of a plug for the Ed Spec Committee, who's having to look at all of this because education is not the same. And that school is a perfect example. We have a 300 square foot per student cap currently in our funding. But the kids that attend school there, many of them would not have been in school in 1970 and 80 when our concepts of what special education is. More space is required. We'll be bringing some recommendations to the IAC to consider specifically what it takes to provide a sufficient education to those children as well, which may take a little more space than others that might require less. So thank you for working with us. It's important work, and we thank you for your help.
We appreciate it very much.
Thank you for making the trip down. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Already.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm
Dr.
sorry.
Sal.
Yes, Dick?
I just have one comment, actually, just a kind of a historical note. As a very young estimator, I bid on the Newmarket Middle
wow.
School.
Wow.
I believe it was 1976, and our company was awarded that project.
It's been a great school. Thank you for your work.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really, really awesome historical concept here. So thank you for letting us know. Any other questions before we let Frederick go? All right, thank you very much
Thank you very
again.
much.
We really appreciate it. And now we welcome Caroline County to the podium. Good morning, Dr. Salins and Mr. Nagel. It's good to see you.
Good morning, good morning. Just want to say good morning and thank you for this opportunity to come here today and advocate for the needs of Caroline County, as we like to do as a small district. We also want to thank you for approving already the funds for us to move forward and make our project a 2-year project. I'm sure, as you know, Caroline County, it's not only a small district, but a very needy district as it relates to funding, and spreading a project over 3 years can make it far more challenging for us to accomplish. So we just want to thank you right up front for that opportunity. We really want to take an opportunity, we're kind of going to tag team this just a little bit, so you'll hear Mr. Nagel jump in from time to time, just to share a couple of unique characteristics about Caroline County as it relates to building a new school for Greensboro Elementary School. You can see the projections on the very first page of the packet that show you out till year 10, which is 2027. And this is actually captured for year 7, which is 801 students. And we're here to show that this trend, you can see that's kind of an anomaly of a year where it's dipped down. So our first request is that we would kind of reevaluate and look at not necessarily just year 7, but maybe even look at that 10-year mark to see where we are going to be at that point. So instead of basing it on the square footage on 801, we would ask that you base it on 819. So that would be our first request. Secondly, if you go to page 2, we want to show you that although the state has taken consideration for many, many years now to look at the needs of our special populations, such as special ed students, and their needs as it relates to giving them specialized instruction, which sometimes is necessary to pull students out of the regular class into a smaller group environment for them to meet their needs. We do that already for special ed, and we thank you for that. But what we're asking is that we don't necessarily do that for our English language learner students. And so those English learner students have the same needs. At Greensboro in particular, we currently have 6 English language teachers and 6 English language tutors. So that's 12 additional staff members. And right now, those teachers are teaching in closets, in cubbies, and in closet storage units, places throughout the building to make it work, even in the middle of hallways to make it work. We do have some photos here so that you can see that small group instruction on page 3. So we don't want to go into a new construction and open a new building where we already would be putting teachers in an area that would not be conducive to the learning environment that they deserve, just as well as any other special education student or special population student. So you can see in this chart the English language learners and how our population has continued to grow. Right now, it makes up 25% of the school, the English language learners do. The population as a whole is 40% Hispanic. You can see that not only do we have to meet the needs of our students who are labeled as English learners, but also those students who are released, because we still have to monitor them, so we still have that population. And you can see that this is tied to a state expectation. Now that we have MCAP, and WIDA falls under MCAP, and WIDA is the test that students who are English learners have to
pass in order to be exited from the program. So that's all tied together. So that accountability piece is just as high stakes as any other student who has to take any other MCAP exam from kindergarten all the way through. So with that expectation that they meet that standard and exit that program, we're asking for that additional space. You can see that if we get our students as kindergartners, as they pre-K and K students, that we can exit them. And so we can eliminate that problem of needing additional staffing at the middle school if we can exit these program students at the elementary level, which we feel that we can do if we can provide them with specialized instruction, which does force us to have small group opportunities in areas through the building.
Always asking for exceptions to the standard, but that's, Caroline County. And it speaks to, as you flip through the rest of the packet, pages 4 and 5, the gap that we currently have. The building as designed in order to accommodate those spaces needed for the additional EL teachers and tutors gives us a square footage gap as to what the state's programming the building to be at versus what we think it needs to be at. And in Caroline County, where currently the state cost split is 81% state, 19% local, that ends up lowering that significantly if the local has to pick up 100% of that additional space. And based on projections as to from the architect and from outside sources garnered by the architect, it currently sits at about a 55-45 split, which is a big haul for Caroline County. It represents the single largest construction project ever in the history of Caroline County. Very rural county, but it is one that the commissioners are committed to. And the very last page of the packet shows their commitment letter that has been forwarded up to Mr. Burrell's office. Then that last year, in an election year, the county commissioners, all three of which were up for election, publicly decided to raise the piggyback tax to the maximum level in order to provide the funding stream necessary for the debt associated with this project. They all three got reelected. So it speaks to the commitment of education in Caroline County and the trust in the elected officials and the education, focused on the education side to do their very best with the resources that are provided. And, while we're tooting our own little horn in Caroline County, page 6 of the packet, the previous page, speaks to the fact that we do take care of the state's investment. We are one of the less wealthiest jurisdictions, but the chart here produced by Mr. Gurrell's office, based on inspections of our facilities, show that we do take care of the investment that's there, because we don't have the resources to continue to put money after money into, and we do, but at the same time have some of the lower expenditures on a cost per pupil basis for maintenance and operation of plants. So we think our buildings are very efficient, very well maintained. Our community is very proud of the state of those. And so for all those reasons, we respectfully request that some additional consideration given for some additional square footage for this building.
Thank you. Questions from the IAC? All right.
Could I make a comment?
Yes,
Thank
please.
You. So for the new members, this was a school that we also went out and visited, which is a practice now that we've adopted to try to go out and look ahead of time and get eyes on particularly what the needs are so that we can better understand. The purpose of the facility is to support education, and it's hard to do on paper. It really is important that we understand what the needs are. This was a school that the original plan was to put an addition onto the school, which, as we did the analysis and looked at what was there, it didn't make sense because it's going to be less expensive overall to own this facility, to build and own it, replacing it. And so with that, it did require a heavier lift by the county. The county recognized that there might cost them more on the front, but they're saving money in the long run, and made that decision, and it was a darn good decision. Now we're having to take a look at specifically how we design the project. And I want to encourage you to keep looking hard, because certainly in an existing facility that you have provided these pictures, we don't have enough space and they're having to teach in closets. But as we build a new school, education changes. Some spaces of the old school may not be needed in the new school as we're thinking about this. So if we can build this within the square footage that we've budgeted for, it will be also a win for the county, both in the short run and the long run. We just have to make sure it's educationally sufficient. So we will stand to support you in making good decisions and help you do the analysis using the planning department of MSDE to really study this, just as we've done on the guidelines. As you know, we're working on adding up the various spaces with the curriculum folks within MSDE. It's got to work, and we definitely are committed to making sure it works. But let's see what we can do. Make the architects work hard.
We have been.
Okay.
That's why we're here, though.
Yeah. As I stated in the very beginning, we have often in the history of education, this is my 27th year, looked at special education and noticed and recognized that they need something different. And that's why we're here, because our English learners need something different as well. And maybe, who knows, Karen, one day we might need gifted and talented spaces for pull-out. We don't know what we're headed with that. Right. But we just want to recognize that they are a different population and that they have a need that's different than our gen ed students.
And didn't I visit Greensboro?
Yes.
Just this year?
Yes.
I was going to say, it's one of the few schools in Caroline that I did not work in.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it has a
Delightful.
great population of
Does.
students
It does.
and great staff. So
Absolutely.
It's a great visit.
Very, very wonderful
All right.
family.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you so
much for
much.
coming here today. Have a good rest of your day. Safe travels
You
home. And
too.
now we'd like to invite Montgomery County, Dr. Smith. I'd like to say welcome home.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you very much. Ready?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Salmon, and members of the Interagency Commission on School Construction. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you this morning and present our appeal of the staff recommendations for state funding in Montgomery County Public Schools for the 2020 capital budget request. With me today is Dr. Andrew Zuckerman, Chief Operating Officer, and Mr. James Song, Director of the Department of Facilities and Management. Also with us today is Ms. Adrienne Karamihas, Director of Division of Capital Planning in the Department of Facilities Management. You have copies of our testimony, so I'd like to take time to just make a few points regarding our appeal. Our revised state aid request is $113.8 million. The IAC staff recommendation is to fund $45.95 million of the request. Therefore, we are appealing the $67.83 million balance that was not recommended for state funding. This appeal includes planning approval for 10 projects, planning approval and construction funding for 8 projects, and construction funding for 4 projects. 4 of the projects we are appealing, priorities 11, 13, 14, and 15, were not recommended for full funding by the IAC. These projects are Lucy V. Barnsley Elementary School, 11 classroom addition project, completed in September of 2018 and received partial funding. Potomac Elementary School Revitalization Expansion Project, currently under construction, anticipated to be completed in January of 2020, received partial funding. S. Krista McAuliffe Elementary School, 10 classroom addition project, anticipated to be completed in September 2019, received no funding. And Seneca Valley High School Revitalization Expansion Project, anticipated to be completed September 2020, received partial funding. I would point out about Seneca Valley that as we are building that school, we have made an adjustment, and we are going to put a second career and technology academy that will match our newly opened Edison Academy in an up-county high school. And so for a small amount of money, we're going to be able to get another hub of career and technology opportunity for literally thousands of students. And I wanted you to know that's very important as we build hubs and satellites across the county for career and technology programs in Montgomery County. In addition, the following 8 projects, priorities 16 through 31, have been forward funded by Montgomery County to address the overutilization and aging infrastructure of schools: Ashburton Elementary, Tilden Middle School, Rock Terrace School Revitalization and Expansion. That is a co-location. It will be our 3rd co-location. of special education services for students with intense level of need with a comprehensive school. And so it'll be our third one in the county. Maryvale Elementary School, Carl Sandburg School Revitalization Expansion, that's also one of those. Thomas Pyle Middle School Addition, Tacoma Park Middle School Addition, Pinecrest Elementary, Montgomery Knowles Elementary, and Walt Whitman High School Addition. These 12 projects approximately will provide 170 classrooms or nearly 3,800 seats to address our overutilization throughout the county. Also, these projects will address aging infrastructure either by replacing existing facilities that have reached the end of their life cycle or by the replacement of specific building systems during the capital project. It's vital the state planning approval and funding is provided in order to make available those local dollars for other capital projects in the county. On October 23, 2018, we received the annual issues letter that identified outstanding questions as a result of the designee's review of our state CIP submission. Our responses were forwarded to Mr. Robert Gorell, Executive Director, on October 31, 2018. That's in attachment 2, and are incorporated in our revised FY 2020 state CIP request. Therefore, we believe these projects should be funded as requested. MCPS continues to experience another year of student enrollment growth. Our growth is at a lower rate than we've experienced over the past 10 years. Official September 30th, 2018 enrollment is 162,680 students for a one-year increase of 1,134 students. That's about a little less than half of what we experienced last year and the year before and for several years before that. Since the 2009-2010 school year, enrollment has increased by 20,903 students in Montgomery County. So in 8 school years, it's increased by over 20,000, almost 21,000 students. We do not anticipate that this relative slowdown in enrollment growth will last long, and therefore we must continue to address our backlog of capacity projects and aging infrastructure through many capacity and systemic replacement projects. The chart on page 2 of our testimony displays the official September 30, 2018 enrollment for this year and the previous 5 years, as well as enrollment projections for the 2024 through 2025 school year. MCPS is engaged in several efforts to reposition the CIP and facility planning processes within the context of the changing enrollment, land use, and population dynamics that have become the new normal in Montgomery County. One of these efforts has been to review the Revitalization Expansion Program to develop a multivariable approach to determine the relative priority of large-scale renovations, including programmatic and capacity considerations. It's been a significant shift, and we have successfully made that shift from a very linear queue to a multivariable analysis in each CIP and as each CIP progresses to look at how needs change. Because what's happened, frankly, for the last many years is the capacity has overwhelmed everything else in our school system, as you can see. With 21,000 new students, we gained a mid-sized school system in the state of Maryland in our county, if you know the numbers that go with the 24 school systems. Our new approach began with an assessment of all of our schools. The assessment evaluates the key facility indicators that impact a school environment ranging from major system infrastructure to security to interior elements and features. This facility data will be a starting point for analysis of multiple educational facility objectives to provide context for planning major capital projects with a scope of work that improves a school's needs as it relates to facility condition, capacity, and educational program. Montgomery County continues to provide substantial financial support. However, even this commitment is not enough. In order for us to meet our obligation to our students, we depend on our partnership with the state to provide its share of our school construction program. The Board of Education, the county government, our state delegation, and I continue to work together to advocate for an increase in state construction funding to enable Montgomery County to receive its fair share of the statewide allocation for our major capital projects. MCPS students comprise 18.2% of the state's total student enrollment. Essentially, 1 out of every 5 students you see in public education in the state of Maryland go to a Montgomery County public school. That includes over 60,000 students currently identified in poverty and almost 80,000 students who have at some point been identified in poverty. That includes almost 30,000 English learners and another 7,000 students who are recently exited from the English Learner Program. And it's a very diverse and wonderful place, but with a lot of need in terms of school facilities and school programming. Without additional funding, the school system will continue to operate in a constant state of catch-up, or I like to say never catch up, and remain far behind in providing adequate classrooms for this growing enrollment. We urge the state to increase the overall school construction funding and are encouraged by the recent announcement by Governor Hogan. As with all things, though, the devil's in the details. And so we will be cautiously optimistic about how that will change our experience as well as the experience across the state. We request this aid to address the longstanding capacity needs and program requirements that we've presented as part of our budget request, supporting documentation, and this appeal information. We very sincerely thank you. I know personally you have a very challenging job, but I am here today to advocate for Montgomery County, and I ask you to seriously consider our incredible need for a very large number of Maryland's children. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Questions from the IAC? Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate you coming today.
Have a very good day.
Thank you. You too. Now we'd like to welcome Prince George's County, Dr. Goldston, and your team. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Salmon. Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Salmon, members of the Interagency Commission, and the staff of the Public Construction School Program. My name is Dr. Monica Goldson. I am the interim CEO for Prince George's County Public Schools, and I am here today with our Mr. Matlock, Sean Matlock, who is our Director of Capital Programs, and Ms. Elizabeth Chason, who is our Capital Improvement Program Officer. Thank you for inviting us here this morning and giving us an opportunity to appeal the funding recommendations for our fiscal year 2020 capital projects. First, we want to thank you for the projects that received an A funding status and for those projects that we received local planning approval on, the projects that absolutely need to move forward this coming school year. Today, Prince George's County Public Schools is appealing the first 75% of recommendations of $13.2 million plus the $12.5 million in enrollment growth and relocatable classrooms funding out of the total request of $73.8 million. We believe the annual allocation should be closer to $22 million to reflect our 10-year average allocation of $29.3 million, plus enrollment growth and relocatable funding to relieve overcrowding. We wish to appeal the balance of construction funding, $5.6 million, for new Glen Ridge Area Middle School. This new 1,200 student school is slated to open at the same time as fully funded and enlarged William Wirt Middle School replacement in August of 2021. Together, both schools will increase capacity by 1,600 seats and relieve severe overcrowding among the northern area middle schools. We are also appealing the balance of construction funding, $17.7 million, for new Cherokee Lane Elementary Replacement School. This pilot replacement school will also double the size of the current school, thus relieving over-enrollment among elementary schools in the Adelphi area of our county and eliminating the need for an additional Adelphi area elementary school. This school replacement will assist us in providing more seats for full-day pre-K and will support my fiscal year 2020 request to reduce class size for grades K through 3. We sincerely appreciate all of the additional work the state staff has done to move this project forward, considering the fact that legislation for the pilot was created in late spring 2018. As a new pilot project, we understand that full funding is contingent upon being under construction by October 1, 2019. In conclusion, please consider increasing our allocation such that the new Glen Ridge Area Middle School and Cherokee Lane Elementary replacement are fully committed for state funding. And thank you again for your continued work with us to keep Cherokee Lane Elementary Replacement School on track to receive additional funds through Senate Bill 92, the Public School Construction Innovation Incentive Pilot Program. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Dr. Goldston. Questions for PG County? Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for having
And we appreciate
us.
the additional information.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite Anne Arundel County, Dr. Arlotto and your team to please come forward. Good morning, Dr. Arlotto.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. So good morning, Dr. Salmon and members of the commission. For those of you that I've not yet met, I'm George Arlotto, the very proud superintendent of Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I'm joined today by Mr. Alex Shaknovich, our Chief Operating Officer. And we are pleased to be here this morning to discuss our fiscal year 2020 capital improvement program. I'd like to begin by thanking the Commission for the continued support that Anne Arundel County has received over the years. I'd also like to thank the IAC staff for recommending approval of and projected approval for our fiscal year 2020 requests that have been moved forward for your consideration. Every funding request continually provides us with a capability to extend the useful life of our assets, address enrollment growth, reduce the ever-growing backlog of projects, and provide safe and secure learning environments. As a county, we have demonstrated our commitment to our CIP and have aggressively sought ways to fund and improve it. We, along with our valued partners in the local government, have found ways and developed practices such as generating additional county funds by extending the local bond duration for public school construction projects from 20 to 30 years. Undertaking detailed feasibility studies on each major project to ensure that renovation versus replacement decision point is fully vetted. Routinely using prototype designs for replacement schools, configuring renovations to maximize the use of the existing footprint, and utilizing sound life cycle costing, value engineering techniques, and proven project delivery methods to drive decision-making and ensure the public receives effective and efficient end products. We continue to use a balanced and targeted approach to our capital budget requests and CIP. With our independently produced and externally validated Strategic Facilities Master Plan, our Educational Facilities Master Plan, and the Comprehensive Maintenance Plan, we are able to formulate our needs and resources into a prioritized operational plan that closely integrates our capital improvements and maintenance activities. These practices afford us opportunities to address the need for safe and secure schools and advance our educational missions, goals, and programs while allowing us to balance the resources that we have available. We are dedicated to the strategic implementation of this sound plan, and in order to keep our CIP whole and balanced, we are requesting your continued support and funding approval for the following projects. Our first appeal is for the additional first-year construction funding for Crofton Area High School. This project is under construction and scheduled to be completed in August 2020. The Crofton Area High School project was locally bid and approved for local planning authority in FY 2018. The maximum state allocation was calculated at the FY 2018 funding level. However, that funding included contingency. Therefore, we are appealing the net state funding amount inclusive of a release of the contingency that was included in the original maximum state allocation approved in FY 2018. Alternatively, we are requesting that the contingency amount be put in the statewide contingency account reserved for Anne Arundel County. Next, we are requesting local planning and construction funding approval for the kindergarten and pre-kindergarten addition at Lithicum Elementary School. This addition will provide appropriately sized early childhood classrooms with restrooms and remove existing relocatable classrooms. Lithicum Elementary School has had full-day kindergarten since 2006-2007 school year. Our last appeal is for 2 systemic projects, a roof replacement at Maryland City Elementary School and an electrical enhancement project at Lindale Middle School. Our systemic projects are the mainstay of our CIP. We thank you in advance for your consideration today of our request to reallocate the FY 2019 TIMS systemic appropriation to the Lindale Middle School project. The state's ongoing support of these critical projects allow us to effectively utilize our resources and efficiently extend the useful life of our facilities. On behalf of our more than 83,000 students, their parents, our employees, our Board of Education of Anne Arundel County, and the community that we serve, I thank you for the opportunity today to discuss our FY 2020 Capital Improvement Program and how it supports Anne Arundel County and the state of Maryland. So at this time, again, I thank you and we're welcome to take your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Arlotto.
Yes, ma'am.
Questions from the IAC? Secretary Churchill.
No question. I thank you for your presentation. Since we've been talking about old projects, I'll say my first project out of college as a project manager was the conversion of Andover High School into, at that time, Andover Lendale Middle School.
Right.
I was the project manager for that back in 1994. Well, that shows your age when your projects are either renovated or demolished. So
There you go.
anyway.
Well, we're not planning on demolishing that one, so you did a good job. Thank you.
That is really awesome. Yes, Mr. Gorel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Superintendent, I want to thank you for all of the assistance and information that Alex has been able to provide to us during the development of the assessment RFP. He was invaluable as far as feedback and guidance, and we'll need more as we move forward. And then also Lisa loaning us to the EdSpec work group. Her knowledge is invaluable in representing all of the LEAs, and I thank you very much for what you guys do. You do good work. You're providing good examples to all of us. Thank you.
Well, if I may, I want to thank you for thanking us and really for recognizing the good work. Lisa and Kyle there with Lisa as well as Alex are an amazing team. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by that kind of talent, right? So good leadership is surrounding yourself with good people and getting out of their way and letting them do the work. But we're glad to lend any assistance that we can. This is a team that really focuses on the needs of children each and every day. And so thank you for the recognition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arlotto.
Thank you.
Now we're happy to welcome Carroll County to the podium. Dr. Lockhart, it's good to see you today. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Superintendent Salmon, Executive Director Gurl, members of the IAC, and staff. We appreciate the opportunity to come before you today and discuss our capital funding request. I'm Steve Lockhart, Superintendent of Schools in Carroll County. Joining me today are John O'Neill, our Assistant Superintendent of Operations, and Ray Prokop. Ray is our Director of Facilities Management. Also joining us are Jim Marks, Supervisor of Construction, and Bill Kane, our Facilities Planner. We really want to just come before you today and express our appreciation for the staff recommendations of $5,317,000 in state funding for the Westminster High School Science Room renovations project, the Winfield Elementary HVAC replacement project, and the Cranberry Station Elementary roof replacement project. We're further grateful for the staff recommendation for an additional $1,722,000 in funding to be allocated in May of 2019. These recommendations would fully fund the state construction share for these top priority projects for us. So we really wanted to come here and say thank you for that. Additionally, we wanted to share that we anticipate expanding our request for state participation in construction projects in the near future. Our county has been through some difficult fiscal years, and our school system has been met with several successive years of declining enrollment. The good news is the fiscal picture is improving, and our enrollment appears to be stabilizing. Next year, we hope to bring you a request for a modernization project for the Carroll County Career and Technology Center, and potentially a modernization project for East Middle School in Westminster, which is our facility with the most severe age and condition this time. Again, appreciate the staff recommendation and your efforts to prioritize and fund projects statewide. We appreciate your time and consideration, opportunity to speak today, and are certainly happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Lockhart. Questions for Carroll County? Hearing none, we thank you very much for your trip here, and have a safe trip home.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now we'd like to invite Cecil County, Dr. Lawson and your team to come forward, please.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thanks for having us. It's my first go-around, so go easy on me here.
Okay, we'll be easy on you, Jeff.
Good morning. On behalf of the Board of Education of Cecil County, we submit these comments in support of our FY20 Capital Improvement Plan. We appreciate your continued efforts to make public school construction funds available to those jurisdictions with the most pressing needs. The following project received partial approval as part of the first round of recommendations. We would like to make an appeal as our county continues to struggle with high priority needs and an ever-increasing deferred maintenance list. Chesapeake City Elementary School replacement, as you're aware, is our only request for FY20. This elementary school serves the Chesapeake City area community, but is at the end of its useful life. In 2015, a feasibility study was conducted to determine if the building should be renovated or replaced. The study concluded the building should be replaced due to the nature and age of the original construction, as well as the multiple additions which were constructed over many years. Local planning was approved in last year's CIP. Schematic design documents were approved on October 22, 2018. We submitted design development documents on November 12, 2018, and are currently awaiting review comments. We have proceeded with the construction documentation at our own risk so as to not hold up the anticipated start of construction summer of 2019. We are thankful for the initial partial funding of $2,213,000, and we respectfully request that you recommend the additional $1,787,000 of the FY20 CIP submission, which will allow our county to contribute and fund their portion of this project. We respectfully request the additional $1.787 million of the FY20 CIP to begin construction project at Chesapeake City Elementary School. In conclusion, we wish to recognize the significant commitment on the part of the State of Maryland, Cecil County Council, and the Board of Education of Cecil County to improve our schools' facilities. Both the county and state should be commended for this financial commitment, especially in light of competing fiscal needs. We find ourselves, however, in the unfortunate position of being a low-wealth county with aging buildings and new mandated programs. Our long-term strategic plan for the capital improvement plan is to decrease the total amount of deferred maintenance across the county while improving the instructional environment for our students and staff. We thank you for providing us this opportunity to come before you to address the school facility improvement needs in our county. We appreciate the consideration already given to Cecil County as reflected in the designee's recommendation, and hope you will give careful consideration to our comments in your very difficult deliberations.
Thank you, Dr. Lawson. Questions for Cecil County?
Could I make a statement?
Yes, Director Burrow.
It's kind of confusing sometimes, but this year we have provided us at 75%, really, your understanding of what the entire allocation will be. So the amount that you need to be able to move forward is totally contingent on the legislature. We're only allowed to fund 75%, but we recognize at this point your 100% ask. So you will have the funds, provided that the legislature don't need it for something else, and they never have. You will have the funds that you need to be able to move the project as anticipated.
We are thrilled. As a community, there's an awful lot of energy behind this on the county government's participation as well.
And I hope you won't wait, because that final commitment doesn't come till May. So I think that you can bet on past history that you will have the project fully funded and get going You save money by moving your project faster.
Hopefully you can come up for groundbreaking.
That would be super. Please,
Great,
please
Dr.
invite
Salmon.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
very
your
much for
support.
coming.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great holiday.
All righty, you
Thank
too.
you.
Now I'd like to invite Maryland School for the Blind to come forward. Pleasure to see the new director from Maryland School for the Blind.
Thank you, Dr. Salmon and members of the Commission. We appreciate this opportunity to speak today. Prior to my stepping into this role as the superintendent of the Maryland School for the Blind in September, I had had the opportunity to visit the campus on numerous occasions over the past 25 years of my career in blindness education. And I remember remarking on numerous occasions, even back then, how the campus needed some support and some help, that the facilities were aging, and that we needed some upgrades to the facilities. So when I did come to Maryland, finally in a leadership role, I was really awestruck and felt extremely thankful to the state of Maryland for the remarkable commitment to the facilities of this school for the blind in the state. Also, as a new superintendent, I continue to learn very much about our finances and what's been going on at the school. I've been asking a lot of questions of a lot of different people, and I've been listening to the advice that I'm receiving from our leaders, from my advisors, and also from you, from the committee that you advised me back in October. Here we are, we find ourselves in the position that we're currently in the middle of phase 4 of our campus master plan construction, and we need a little bit more help. As you know, the school serves all 24 Maryland jurisdictions. There are currently 213 students that are directly served on the campus. This is an increase in our enrollment, and it continues to rise. We have several more students that are coming in over the next few months. Many of these students, as you know, have significant medical and physical needs requiring accessible facilities. And by serving these students, MSB assists the local school systems in providing more cost-effective options than looking out of state for placement options. The school is requesting $16 million in this appeal, and we do that with much respect and much understanding, acknowledging fully that this is twice the amount of the anticipated allocation. And there are important reasons why we are asking for this. Maryland School for the Blind is a private school. We do not have taxing authority to generate revenue for construction, and the school has secured the maximum amount of financing that it can acquire through bank loans in amounts of $24 million, which were used to forward fund the construction. In September 2017, the school engaged in this 4th phase of the campus master plan, the newcomer Case and Campbell building, which is for classrooms and other functions, which is the centerpiece of the campus, in the middle of the campus, architecturally significant, and also a $45 million endeavor, which was originally designed as a 30-month project. But due to cash flow, we had extended this construction to 43 months, and we'll be able to complete this in 2021. But for every month that the school has delayed the project, there are associated general conditions costs of around $100,000 per month. If our appeal were granted, MSB could get the construction back on schedule and save a projected 11 months of construction, a non-budgeted annual cost, additional cost of $1.1 million. We have explored deferring or abandoning this construction. We've looked at the need for the space, and we do need the space as it houses many classrooms, our career and transition classroom program, our campus library, the central kitchen and dining rooms. Because this building is an interconnected set of buildings that function as one building, they share code requirements and life safety systems, including sprinklers and fire alarms, as well as mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, which are connected through each space. That would require completion whether or not we were to suspend any portion of the construction. The school has met with the Maryland Health and Higher Education Facilities Authority and are currently following up with financial advisors to determine whether we can obtain more competitive tax-exempt financing and potentially even a bridge loan to help both the school's cash flow as well as our financial position in the long term. However, all of that is to be determined in the future and requires more study. The school will continue to diligently pursue every strategy to bring the current project to completion on time and on budget. And as MSP pursues these strategies, we do respectfully request the $16 million for FY 2020. This will enable the school to bring this project to completion once again, conserve financial resources, and get the students back into their school building, who are some of the most sensitive students in the state, sensitive to disruption, to the noise, and to the dust. We really thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Rob. Any questions for Maryland School for the Blind? Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming down. That concludes the comment period for the appeals. Now, if the IAC would turn to, I know you've been using the Section 3, I'm sorry, Section 2. Please turn to that section at this point. Just so you know, this item was for information at this point. We don't need approval.
Do not.
So, are there any lingering questions from any of the presentations that anyone would like to bring up at this point? Dick?
I have a question with regard to the state's, the authorization of state funding for the Maryland School for the Blind, which is a private institution, and what our role, how does that work exactly?
It was, the Maryland School for the Blind was included into this program for a temporary period. I believe it expires 27? Yes, it's in statute to allow a temporary point of time to expire in 2027 of available funds to be made available to the Maryland School for the Blind. They developed a pretty aggressive program, and they're way ahead of that schedule, and hence they're a little backlog right now. They've got more work going than they had funds that are available when we consider all of the other needs in the state.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you very much, and thank you to all the school systems that came today and sent testimony. We really appreciate their information. So now we're going to turn to Section 3, which is the fiscal year 2020 Capital Improvement Program, and start off on page 48 with the Innovation Incentive Pilot Program. There's a concise summary of this on page 49, and I'm going to ask
Thank you.
Director Gurrell to review the detail that occurs on pages 51 through 127.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And there's also a copy of the text in here, the statute too. It's a pretty simple statute, and I'm sure a senator can recognize those. Sometimes are the hard ones because you have to fill out the details, and that's what we've been struggling with on this one. But I believe that we have been able to determine what the average. Well, in essence, in summary, the bill is about creating an incentive for a school project that can be built for 30% below the average of 3 years. So the law does not really discern what years. So we tried to pick the most recent years. Whenever we first improperly interpreted the law, we only included new and replacement schools, so we were comparing apples and apples to a project from Prince George's that has applied. That's the Cherokee Lane Elementary School. But we recognized through the Senator Rosapep, who was the sponsor, that the intent of the legislation was to include even the renovations, the major renovations in addition. So we went back, recalculated the numbers, and came up with a baseline number that you will see here on as a spreadsheet item that's got blue across the top. If you look at the state IAP threshold calculation, that average of the 3 years of fiscal years in their fiscal year, not calendar years, is 43,586. that gave us when you pull 30% off of that, the threshold, the number that you have to get per student, project cost per student would have to be below 30,510. The current project, as it has been proposed, is 29,601 for an enrollment of 790 in the school. This is there's not an estimate based upon a design. This is a budget number, and so I think somebody said it earlier, Superintendent Smith, that the devil's in the details. So the motion is crafted to try to allow us to work through details over the months coming forward. And if I could read the motion, Madam Chair. The motion is to make a preliminary approval of Cherokee Lane Elementary School in Prince George's County to participate in the Innovation Incentive Program in fiscal year 2020 capital improvement program with an anticipated increase in their state share of eligible costs by 20%. And I'll make a comment on that here in a minute. Approval for the participation of the pilot program will be reassessed upon contract approval and will not be final until financial closeout demonstrates that the project achieved a cost per student at or below the incentive program threshold amount that we have established that I just read. So in other words, a lot can happen, as the builders and developers know at the table. And so going through the project, we have to wait until the very end. All change orders have been done, bills are paid, that we look to see did the project actually keep itself under the threshold. So there's a lot to be done between now and then. We hope that we can work with the senator, and he's been very forthright and accommodating to spending time with us, as well as our senator here at the table, to cause that support that we need to work through these details. And we will hopefully come up with a simpler system going forward so that the LEAs that are interested in the pilot program can understand, in my opinion, years ahead in advance of asking for a project, so that they can dive into the design, work through the details, talk to their vendors, and get strong commitments before they ever come to us. I think that this is a tough one. I admire the intent of this. That it is looking to produce a project that is going to challenge all of us in what a school facility can be and still be educationally sufficient. They will gain a 20% advantage. They're 70% state match now. That would put them at 90%. There were some questions in interpretation of the law of whether it was a 20% factor on top of the 70, which would only be a 14% increase, but I believe that that opinion is that it is indeed 20% that we would add on top. That's a significant bump that the locals will get in that, and it looks like that they will bring their, at least from what we have in front of us now, that they will bring their project size to one that is what we call a right-size school, that it's within what the eligibility requirements currently are of the IAC, which means it's going to be less expensive to own and operate, not only to build, but to own and operate. So far, so good. Thank you, and I would stand for any further questions on that.
Any questions for Director Gorell? All right, would you read the motion again, please?
Yes,
one
thank
more
you.
time?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Oh, questions, I'm sorry.
Dick has a question.
Go ahead, Dick.
I'm just curious, how do you think that, what was the primary way in which the cost savings were achieved?
Their plan is to be able to build large portions of the project off-site in assemblies, and then bring them to site and assemble them. That has the advantage of avoiding any wage issues, but also wage scale, but also, even more importantly, it's a bigger number in my opinion, is that they are able to do mass production. So rather than stick building and assembling with lots of cutting and assembling on site, they will be able to set up forms and jigs and be able to build things in a mass production way and bring them to the site to assemble them. So they believe that that is really one of the ways that they're bringing their costs down. They're right at $265 a square foot right now, where our state average that we're using is about $100 a square foot more. So they haven't done it yet, but that is the plan, and they have talked to people that they believe will allow them. So that cost per square foot, coupled with the the right sizing of the school, looks like it's going to get them there. That's a 30% drop. That's a big achievement if they're able to do it, and they plan to.
And this motion is just to allow this to go
Process to
into
go
the program, and they take the risk on execution.
They do. If they're not able to meet this target, they will get the same state share that they would otherwise. That 20% will go away. This is the first year. The years that follow, the way the statute was voted and approved by the governor, would drop to 10%. So that's still a big number to have a 10% bump in the state share, but 20% is the one for this year for this program.
Director Gurl, do you know to what extent their reliance on off-site manufacture of components and systems changes the use of Maryland-based companies?
That's a good question, and I do not know the answer to that, but I can report that out maybe in 6 or 7 months. I should know more.
I'd be curious. I certainly understand the approach. You know, basically it takes the wage scale cost to a great extent out of the project. I just wondered to what extent it has perhaps an effect of taking business and work out of Maryland.
It's a good question.
I'll have to report back on that whenever that information is available. Thank you for asking. It's a good question.
I have one
Yes,
further
please.
question. How do you quantify the operating efficiencies of this construction? You fund it in advance, but is there a lack? I mean, how do we quantify that?
There are, of course, two ways to quantify. The first is to estimate it, and we use a life cycle cost analysis by looking at what the manufacturer says their product is supposed to do, how long a roof is supposed to last, how long a mechanical VAV box that should last for 30 years. We saw one earlier that was being replaced and had only achieved 23. We should be able to estimate what those actual costs will be, and as well as in the design, the energy costs. We can estimate cleaning costs based upon the materials that are being used. The proof is in the pudding. How much does it really cost to own and operate over time? This particular district, as well as Baltimore City and many others, are using a product that will produce that kind of information if properly utilized, so that we should be able to capture that information and understand. Trouble with building is they have a long life, and it takes a while to accumulate that information, but I'm very anxious to know what those dollars are. You could build something cheap that is a lot more expensive to own, and those ownership costs are actually bigger than the first cost. Thank you.
But is the estimates, all you could do is estimate, like you said, is the estimation part of this calculation?
It's not something that would be within our approval or even official comment, but we certainly will be looking at it. It's not a requirement. That life cycle cost analysis or the feasibility phase of a project is something that occurs under the normal CIP process, but it's excluded by law for this particular application.
Okay.
Secretary Churchill.
Yeah, Bob, how are site costs factored in on this reduction?
This includes site costs. So this is the total cost of the project. Whenever I say 265, I believe, or 269, wherever it is, it includes that. And as I compare $100 more, that's the average that we're using this year for projects that you are going to discuss here in a minute.
Okay, because the statute talks about 3 jurisdictions.
Yes.
Which have wildly different site factors for construction in Maryland. So
yes, and the EdSpec work group is discussing this. There's lots of other variables that would affect how this applies across the state if more districts were to go forward with this. One is scale. As you know, the larger that a project is in population, the lower the cost per student, because you get scale advantages of the building cost as well as reduced percentages of tear, the circulation space, the bathrooms, mechanical rooms, and things like that. The smaller the school is, the more expensive it is per student just because of the scale, as well as whether it's rural or urban. And there's a lot of factors that kind of aren't in here, but frankly, they're not so much in our current program because we use that standard cost per square foot. But the EdSpec work group is discussing that as well.
Is there, I'm sorry.
Secretary McCord first.
I'll just follow up. This is there are 3 jurisdictions identified in the statute, and this is Prince George's County. Following up on Secretary Churchill, do we have interest or have expressed interest from Washington or Harford counties in participating in the
I have not heard any interest, but I would look to my staff. Is anybody? Not at this time.
Okay.
Yes, is that your question?
Same question,
Brian?
yes.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions before we move forward with a motion to approve? Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Madam
Thank you,
Chair.
Senator. We have a second?
Sure.
All right, second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we now move forward to item 3B, which is on page 49. This is a very important item. So we'll have our staff come up to lead us through this.
So Ravia, please, and I think that you can represent us. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ravia has done a fantastic job. We've done it differently, as I've said several times today. That is a challenge. It's a challenge to us internally, coordinating each other as well as working with everybody. And thank you for the exceptional work that you've done.
You're welcome. As shown in the motion, the commission is required to approve 75% of the preliminary capital budget on or by December the 31st for each year. The governor's preliminary budget for school construction totals $330 million, of which $280 million is for the capital improvement program. $6.1 million is for the aging schools program, $3.5 is for the non-aging schools program, and $40 million is for the enrollment growth and relocatable classrooms program. Of the 232 projects received, the IAC staff is recommending a total of 103 projects for your approval. As Bob stated earlier, we will be making recommendation later to amend the motion to remove the planning approval for the planning approval project in Frederick County. If we can turn to page 1, I'm going to try and move through this really quickly. So on page 51, you'll see the LEA summary, which we discussed at our November meeting.
Big pull-out page.
Non-LEAs, there have been slight funding adjustments for non-LEAs. They've been very modest. We can discuss them more in detail as we go through the modeling spreadsheet, which begins on page 52. So I ask you to turn to 52. For the 75% round, Allegheny County in May will be recommended for full funding. Anne Arundel County is being recommended for $20 million this round. I wanted to touch base on Crofton Area High School, which is priority number 12. They discussed the 2.5 contingency. We have applied that to their worksheet. That's due to the project being bid in 2017, so that cost of construction is applicable for that time frame. So we have addressed that concern. Unless there's additional funding after session, we would not be able to allocate any additional funding for Lithicum Elementary School, which is priority 14 and 15, and Lindale Middle, which is priority number 16. Baltimore County begins at the bottom of page 52. So I'm going to ask you that we turn to page 53. As the LEA stated, we are recommending funding for that top 4 priorities, and that's because the funding amount that they requested would only be able to be applied to those four projects unless additional funding was recommended at the end of session. The next page, page 54, Calvert County, as you heard, they will be receiving full funding. Well, they'll be recommended for full funding, contingent on your consideration. Caroline County's recommendation is shown at the top of page 55. So I won't go into Caroline County's testimony regarding the modification of the SRC because we will be reviewing that. Department of Planning, the Maryland State Department of Education will be looking at how we can help them with right-sizing their facility. We won't make any promises, but we definitely will examine the materials that they provided. So if we go to Carroll County, they are being recommended for full funding in May. I notice these allocations are based on 75%, but I'm just trying to show that while we're recommending the 75%, in the out months, they will be recommended for full funding. Cecil County is being recommended up to their request in May. Charles County did not appeal, but they did ask that I share with the commission if any additional funding becomes available, that the county has committed funds for priority number 5, John Hanson Middle Roof Project, and that state funding is critical for this project to move forward. If there are no questions, we can move over to page 56. And we'll look at Dorchester County, which is fully funded in May. Frederick County is being recommended for $13 million this round. We'll be looking at recommending for planning approval for the project that they discussed, Waverly Elementary School and the East Frederick Elementary School. Further discussion is needed for the Oakdale Middle School project because there are some issues with the enrollment at this time, but we will be looking at it in January or February of this upcoming year. If we turn to page 57 and we look at Garrett County, you'll notice that there's a change. In November, we were recommending priorities 1, 2, and 3, but due to local fiscal constraints, we are only able to recommend funding, and that's in line with the local government's request for number 2, Southern High School. And that project is going to be recommended for full funding in May. For Harford County, we'll be fully recommending full funding in May. The major change in Howard County is priority number 6, the new high school, number 13. The LEA has asked that we remove funding. It was $10 million that we were showing in November. They would like to submit that project to the IAC in February in FY 2021. So that's their request. So we were accommodating them. Kent County will be fully funded by May of 2019 if you approve that request. If we move to the next page, Montgomery County starts on page 58. So I wanted to stop and talk about the projects that they were appealing. So Lucy Barnsley, the net state funding for that project is $208 million. The LEA requested $2.3 million. However, our worksheet doesn't support their request. Their maximum gross area is less than their building, their existing building size. So based on our formula, we could only get them to that small amount. And for priority number 12, Lux Manor Elementary School, the LEA is requesting this year 6.9, so we are accommodating them, and that's why it's showing partial funding. For priority number 14, that project is labeled a D, and that's because their existing facility is larger than the maximum gross area allowable. And for priority number 15, Seneca Valley High School, we are recommending partial funding. We tried to meet, we were very close, or we met the average authorization that we had come up with. So we had to make adjustments because we had to give funding to smaller counties here and there, but they're not too far off the mark with their average. If we turn to page, I'm going to say, we can turn to page 60, even though it starts at 59 for Prince George's County. The LEA is requesting more funds, but that really isn't feasible at this time. The question becomes, where does the money come from? Who do we take funds from to apply to their projects? In November, we came before you and explained that a number of their projects just weren't eligible. We were able to work with them and get priorities number 3 and 4, the new Glen Ridge Area 2 middle school. Additional funding, it was lower, but we got them down to, by May, we could have them to $12 million. For priorities number 10 and 11, New Cherokee Lane, they haven't started design, so it wouldn't be fiscally responsible for the IAC staff to recommend anything more than what we've given, which is $1,000, but it at least sets them up for being able to get the bonus, the 20% bonus, by January, is it December the 31st of 2019? Of 2020. And so for Queen Anne's, we'll be fully funded, we'll be recommending full funding in May. And I want to keep saying we'll be recommending because we're not making decisions. We want to provide you with the information so you can make the decision. The balance of funding will be recommended for Somerset County in May. If we turn to page 61. Sorry. If additional funds are available after the FY 2019 session, and St. Mary's County would like full funding for their roof and HVAC project, priority number 8. Talbot County's recommendation is in line with what's needed to move the project forward. Washington County would also like funding applied to their last project if anything becomes available. Wacomico County would like funds applied to priority number 3 if there are funds available. Can you hear me?
I think you need to point it more towards your yes, thank you.
Worcester County will be recommended for full funding in May. Baltimore City's project request begins at the bottom of page 61 and continues to page 63. Staff will be recommending funding for 16 projects. I guess we will be having discussions about Armstead Gardens, not Armstead Gardens, priority 3. Sometime in January, February, to see if there's more discussion that's needed. If we turn to page 63, Maryland School for the Blind, we're recommending $6 million to you for consideration during this round, and we'll be recommending $8 million in May unless additional funds become available. I should note that all systemic renovation projects have been fully funded to the LEA's request. So if you see any partial funded projects, it's because the LEA requested that dollar amount. Pages 64 to 126 summarizes all the LEA's requests and the recommendations by the staff. I don't think we need to go through those. If there are no questions, we can turn back to the IAC motion on page 49.
Are there questions from the IAC on any of these issues? Secretary Churchill?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. And this question, of course, is for Bob, for
Okay.
Director Burrell. You know, Baltimore City in their presentations made some interesting points. I'm sure you've had conversations with them outside of this forum about their issues, their structural issues to get funding into play. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. With Jamie Bridges, he's our only project manager, and he's assigned to Baltimore City to help to move things along. Just as a point to brag about what they've been able to do, as you notice, they don't have contingency projects now that are going into this cycle. They have, with your help and approval, they have moved previous projects forward, which is saving them money, making the spaces good for education. As far as the overall opportunities to improve, it is about planning and design. I hope you noted that because we certainly asked the question, if they have an extra $5 or $6 million that the local governance has allowed them to the CIP program, why don't they fence that off and reserve it for design so that they can make their projects go? But that's easier said for me than it is for them to actually implement. So it's a problem, but I think that it's being worked on.
Thank you.
Other questions from anyone else? All right, we can go back to the motion on page 49.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the FY 2020 capital improvement allocation of 75% for each of the school systems and the Maryland School for the Blind, as shown in the summary of project requests and recommendations, with the exception of the new East Frederick City Elementary School Planning Project.
Any questions on the motion? Do we have approval of the motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. And I also want to point out that this is a whole team, you know, of Fred and Clarence, all of their staff, Michael, and Shantia, everybody. There are meetings after meetings after meetings, you know, that you have to go through to work through the questions on this and try to move it to this point. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you to the staff. You did a great job this year.
Joan, can't forget Joan.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about, this is just an informational item that is included in your books on page 128 through 135, and this is the School Safety Grant Program application allocations. This is a summary of the 15 applications that we've received. So Joan, if you want to lead us through this, that would be great.
Madam Chair, if I could, we would like, and you let us know, we would like to bring this to you every meeting, just as
Yeah, I
information.
think it's a
Thank
good
you.
idea, so we know who's taking advantage of the funds for this purpose. So great. Thank you, Joan. I think you turned it off. There we go.
All right. So good morning, commission members. The item before you is informational. As Dr. Salmon said, it's an update of the report that was provided to you at the last two meetings. And so our cutoff to put it into the books was November 30th, and at that time, we had 15 applications from 5 LEAs that we reviewed and approved. They total $692,000, and just for your information, if you're interested, a breakdown of the project type was seven of the projects were security cameras, 5 were visitor security emergency management systems, and 3 were security vestibules. Now, we have received applications from 2 other LEAs, and 2 other LEAs with a total 65 projects. Therefore, 11 security vestibules, and that amount is $942,000. And then the other is 54 security camera upgrades and security camera server replacements, and that totals $211,050. So we're going to make a leap the next time we bring this report to you. We've had other conversations with the LEAs. Everyone is thinking about this and trying to put applications together, so I think that this will move fairly quickly. Behind the item is the report that we are going to keep updating. We'll bring you the same report, but updated at every meeting. And this shows exactly what I talked about. It doesn't show the applications we haven't approved yet, but
Right.
it shows the.
So you'll be bringing these to us every month, so we'll have
Yes.
a good look at who is getting what and doing what. I think it's not surprising, as I've been visiting schools this year, to see that the largest ask is for the security vestibules. I think we're seeing that that's a huge need, so it's great. Thank you, Joan. Any questions for Joan today? Any of these projects? All right, thank you very much.
Sure thing.
And now we're going to move to our item 5 in our book. Again, this is Baltimore City HVAC project allocations. Jamie's going to come up and discuss that with us. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you. Good morning, Commission. Before you is a motion to approve Baltimore City HVAC projects as presented. This motion is before you because back in December of '07 into January of 2018, an extreme cold spell amplified mechanical deficiencies and led to some closures at Baltimore City schools. At the subsequent session of the General Assembly, the lawmakers wanted to help. And so in the capital budget bill, they included a $15 million appropriation for funds to design, construct, and capital equip heating, ventilation, and air conditioning improvements at Baltimore City Public Schools in accordance with Title V, Subtitle 3 of the Education article. Back in August at the meeting of the IAC wanted to help and approved some waivers of certain COMAR provisions in order to expedite the process. And shortly thereafter, we deployed a website to collect submissions for these projects. In order to help themselves, Baltimore City deployed a crew of job order contractors to scope and estimate the projects. And so at this time, we now have 3 projects totaling a little over $2 million, which a little over 10% is for design. These will be the first allocations from the appropriation, so we'll have a little under $13 million remaining. IAC staff, including representatives from MSDE and MDP and DGS, have reviewed these projects for reasonableness and also consistency with the intent of the legislative bodies. And we'll note that all 3 were affected by the cold in December 17, January 18, and all 3 projects would also address deficiencies that have been noted in prior state maintenance inspection reports. So based on this review, the staff recommends that these 3 projects at Margaret Brent, PK through 8, Frederick Douglass High School, and Tench Tillman, PK through 8, be approved. We will also continue to bring these projects to the IC as they are submitted and also to provide program updates as required.
Jamie, I have a question. How many schools were impacted in December of 2017? And what percentage does this represent that they're going to be able to fix as soon as possible?
I do not have my binder with me, but as I think about the spreadsheet that I had prepared, I would say that there were more than a couple dozen. And I can follow up with you on that. This is just 3. I will say that the city is very good at maximizing every single dollar, and their use of the job order contractors and to scope out these jobs. I have noticed that in a preliminary list that they had intended to include replacement of boilers at Frederick Douglass High School for $700,000, and at this time they're actually requesting to install 2 large electric water heaters that will allow them to separate the use of their boilers from heating water so that they can take their boilers off of service and out of service and have more time to PM that do preventive maintenance. So this just addresses 3 schools. And so we'll have to see what comes next. But
yeah, I think it would be helpful maybe next month for you to bring us that kind of a summary, because I'm winter's here again, and I anticipate that there may be issues. And since people thought I could fix it, I'd like to know ahead of time. They might think I really can fix it this year because I'm chair of the IAC, and I'd really like to be able to have more information so that I can address parent concerns.
Okay, and so just to be clear, you would like some information of the schools that were impacted last year?
Where are they in the line for using some of this $15 million? Because that was the intent of the allocation. Secretary Churchill.
Yes, I just want to make sure I understand this. Of course, that Arctic freeze was what was driving
Yes.
this. And of course, I can give a little bit more perspective since General Services did administer the $2.5 million
That's right.
in terms of emergency funding. So by our count, there were, and this can be confirmed, 118 schools
Wow.
that were affected, 229 projects that were reimbursed through the $2.5 million, including a total boiler replacement at New Era in Cherry Hill.
That's incredible amount of work that
yeah,
got done.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
There's a lot of work that was there. So
Your agency did a great job on that. All right, so maybe we can incorporate some of that information in as well, Jamie. I think that would be, again, helpful. We need to recognize what DGS was able to accomplish, and then we can see what will happen on top of that. Secretary McCord?
Yes, Jamie, is there a kind of a set of projects in the pipeline that are not quite ready for approval? I mean, I don't have it. I mean, it just seems that we have 3 in front of us after all the effort. I
That's
think
right.
there's more effort in going on.
The city has provided me with a preliminary estimate of, they have 3 tiers of priorities with these projects, and I believe there's about 35 of them that they're considering for this fund source, and these first 3 were sort of the test case to see how they could bring them through this process to this point, and then go from there.
I just had an idea wanted to get an idea what's in the pipeline.
Well, I think it makes a good point, but it also makes it even more imperative in my thought process is that DGS was able to do how many?
But we helped Baltimore City with reimbursements on 229 projects in 118 schools that were affected during that time period.
That's fantastic.
That's a huge thing, and I guess I'm back to what I think Secretary McCord was thinking about. Why aren't they moving faster with some of this? So I really think we need an upgraded report for next month.
Right.
And we'll go ahead and, Brian, did you have a question? Okay. Any other question for anyone else? So go ahead and read the motion, and we'll try to get these 3 rolling.
All right, this is a motion to approve Baltimore City HVAC projects as presented with the state allocations identified to be funded through the $15 million for Baltimore City HVAC improvements.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, and a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jamie, and we know you're the messenger. I just want to reiterate that, so thank you
Absolutely.
very much.
Thank you very much.
For the information. All right, so now we're going to move, Michael, come up from the Department of Planning. We're going to move to site approvals, which start on page 137. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. We have a few site approvals for projects that are in process here. And the first one is in Prince George's County for the Glenridge Area Middle School. Number 2, the Board of Ed in Prince George's County is requesting site approval for the middle school site, which is on Flint Ridge Road in Landover Hills, Maryland. This is for a future 1,200-seat middle school, which is one of 2 middle school sites proposed to serve the Glenridge Park area. I don't know if you all have any questions. There is background. I won't go through it all.
Right.
So
you want to just go through each one, so let's.
Yeah, we'll go through them,
137. Okay.
because the next 2 let's do the motion.
All right, will you read the motion, please?
Each of them separately. So the motion for this one is to approve the acquisition and use by the Prince George's County Board of Education of 38.5 acres at 5211 Flint Ridge Drive, Landover Hills, Maryland, for the construction of a future middle school to serve the Glenridge Park area, adhering to the actions identified in the State Clearinghouse Review, State Identifier MD 2016-07011-0620.
Any questions on the motion? Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll go on
Thank you.
to Baltimore County.
Okay, the next two items on the agenda relate to site approvals in Baltimore County. The Department of Planning has completed our site review. Both of these projects have been through State Clearinghouse. We don't have any other questions. However, in preparing these items for this month, having gone through the list of all the pending projects and working with Baltimore County Mayor Plate, who was here earlier, we found that the staff actually had not yet received formal board approval on these sites, even though they've been in development for some time. So I'm going to recommend that we defer these.
Yes,
They will be
absolutely.
on the Board of Ed agenda in February, and so as soon as that's done, we'll bring them
They'll
back.
come back to us. Thank you. So let's move on then to tab D, which is Baltimore City site approval.
Okay, so the final site approval is for a property in Baltimore City related to the Marie G. Faring Elementary School, Middle School Annex project. This has been a transaction in process for quite a while, actually. I visited the site last year. This is for a former church site, which has functioned as a social service agency for a number of years. It is a historic building and other annex that was built, I believe, in the 60s. Baltimore City Schools are acquiring that to have an addition added to Marie G. Faring, which we've talked about with the designees. So there's background here.
Any questions on this site approval? All right, do we have, would you read the motion?
Sure. The motion is to approve the acquisition by the Baltimore City Public Schools of .48 acres of land and the associated Crisp Memorial Church property at 301 East Patapsco Avenue in Baltimore, formerly owned by the Chesapeake Foundation for Human Development Incorporated, for use by BCPSS as the Marie G. Faring Elementary and Middle School Annex, adhering to the actions identified in the State Clearinghouse Review, State Identifier MD 2018-0406-0221.
Thank you. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to having those other items come back after their February board meeting. So IAC members, that concludes our meeting for today. I thank everyone for their attention and their participation in today's meeting, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We have many motions and seconds. And because I have a man beside me that is very close to Santa, by the way, I won't tell you why, but he is.
Peter.
No, it's not who I'm talking about.
Oh,
you
just because I
think.
look like it.
He's been, this is live stream, so I'm not going to really say what he's been doing, but it has something to do with an elf. I'll just say that. And if you want to see some entertaining pictures, please check with him after the meeting today. I'd like to wish everyone happy holidays and safe times. Hopefully, you'll have time to spend with your families and friends and get a little bit of rest before we start. As we all know, the session is coming. So thank you for everything, and have a safe trip home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got any new pictures?